Everyone at the luxury Miami restaurant laughed the night Marcus was caught taking leftovers home. They thought he was just a poor waiter with a sad excuse. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know who those leftovers were for. They didn't know what forcing him to throw the food back onto the plates would set in motion. And none of them, especially the man who mocked him, cared. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to your own reality family channel. It is my prayer for you today that as we delve into this heart-touching story, may God Almighty bless your little efforts and sacrifices you make for others. May these sacrifices of your love be rewarded and not forsaken. Amen. As we go into the full story, do not forget to like, subscribe, and comment so that the story would go round the world to touch hearts and give hope to anyone it comes across. Now the full story. The Miami sun beat down mercilessly on Ocean Drive as Marcus Chen wiped down table 14 for what felt like the 100th time that evening. His white shirt, once crisp at the beginning of his shift, now clung to his back with sweat. The restaurant, Celestial, was one of those places where a single appetizer could cost more than Marcus made in an entire shift. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and the clientele wore watches that could pay his rent for a year. Marcus had been working at Celestial for 3 years, ever since he dropped out of Miami-Dade College. Not because he wanted to, but because his mother got sick. Stage 4 breast cancer. The treatments were expensive, even with insurance, and someone had to take care of his 2 younger sisters while their mother fought for her life. His father had left when Marcus was 12, disappeared into the night like smoke, leaving behind nothing but broken promises and unpaid bills. At 24 years old, Marcus had become the man of the house by default. His dreams of becoming an architect had been carefully folded up and tucked away in a drawer somewhere in his mind, gathering dust alongside all the other things he'd had to sacrifice. Now his days consisted of "Yes, sir," "Right away, ma'am," and "Would you like to hear about our specials?" delivered with a smile that never quite reached his eyes anymore. The dinner rush was winding down. Marcus's feet ached in his cheap dress shoes, the kind that looked acceptable from a distance but fell apart after a few months of the constant standing and walking that came with the job. He'd already walked probably 6 miles that evening, back and forth from the kitchen to the dining room, carrying plates that cost more than his weekly grocery budget. Table 7 had been particularly difficult that night. A group of 5 businessmen, loud and demanding, had occupied it for 3 hours. They'd ordered the most expensive items on the menu, bottles of wine that Marcus couldn't pronounce, steaks that cost $200 each, and they'd sent back 3 different dishes for reasons that seemed to change with their mood. Marcus had maintained his composure throughout, his smile plastered on like a mask he couldn't remove, even when his jaw ached from the effort. When they finally left, Marcus approached the table with his bus tray. The tip sat in the middle of the table, a crumpled $20 bill, for 3 hours of service, for putting up with their condescension and their snapping fingers, and their treating him like he was invisible until they needed something. $20. He'd served them food worth over $1,500, and they'd left him $20. Marcus pocketed the money without emotion. He'd learned a long time ago that getting angry about it changed nothing. Instead, he focused on clearing the table. That's when he noticed it. They'd barely touched their food. 2 of the steaks were half-eaten at most. The lobster tail from one of the entrees sat completely untouched. The sides, roasted vegetables and truffle mashed potatoes, were practically full. Something twisted in Marcus's stomach. Not quite hunger, though he hadn't eaten since his break 6 hours ago when he'd scarfed down a peanut butter sandwich in the back alley. It was something else. A kind of anger mixed with sadness, mixed with the crushing weight of injustice that had become so familiar it felt like an old friend. He thought about his sisters at home. Aaliyah was 15 and Destiny was 12. Smart girls, both of them, smarter than he'd ever been. Aaliyah wanted to be a doctor, had straight A's despite everything they were going through. Destiny loved to read, would lose herself in books from the library because they couldn't afford to buy new ones. Tonight, they were eating rice and beans again. Maybe some chicken. if the pieces he'd bought on sale hadn't gone bad yet. And here, on this table in front of him, was more food than his family would eat in 3 days, about to be thrown in the trash. Marcus made a decision. He glanced around the restaurant. His manager, Robert Hutchinson, was in his office counting receipts. The other servers were busy with their own sections. The kitchen staff wouldn't care. Quickly, Marcus pulled out some takeout containers from his apron. They were supposed to be for customers who wanted to take home their leftovers, but customers who could afford to eat at Celestial rarely took home leftovers. It was beneath them somehow. He carefully transferred the food into the containers, the steaks, the lobster, the sides. His hands moved efficiently, practiced from years of boxing up food. Nobody had explicitly told him he couldn't take home food that would otherwise be thrown away, but nobody had said he could either. It existed in a grey area that Marcus had never dared to explore until now. Just as he was placing the last container in a bag, a voice cut through the air like a knife. Well, what do we have here? Marcus froze. He turned slowly to see Tyler Morrison standing a few feet away, arms crossed over his designer suit. Tyler was another server at Celestial, though calling him a server felt wrong. His father owned 3 restaurants in Miami Beach, and Tyler only worked at Celestial for the experience, something to put on his resume before he took over the family business. He was 23, drove a BMW that he'd gotten for his birthday, and treated the job like it was a game he was playing until real life started. Just cleaning up, Marcus said carefully, his heart pounding. Tyler's laugh was sharp and cruel. Cleaning up? Is that what we're calling stealing now? He raised his voice, making sure others could hear. Hey everyone, check this out. Marcus is taking home leftovers, like some kind of homeless person. A few of the other servers looked over. Jenna, who'd always been kind to Marcus, looked away quickly, embarrassed for him. David, another server, smirked. The hostess, Brittany, covered her mouth but couldn't quite hide her smile. I'm not stealing, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice level. This food was going to be thrown away. That's not the point, Tyler said, stepping closer. He was enjoying this, Marcus could tell. Tyler had always treated him with barely concealed contempt. The way someone might look at something unpleasant, they'd stepped in. The point is, you look desperate. You look pathetic. Do you know how bad this makes the restaurant look? What if a customer saw you? What would they think? Marcus felt his face heating up. Shame, anger, and humiliation warred inside him. My family needs to eat, he said quietly. Oh, your family, Tyler said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. Right. I forgot. You're the one with all the sob stories. Sick mom, little sisters dropped out of school. You know what, Marcus? Nobody forced you to work here. Nobody forced you to have a messed up life. Maybe if you'd made better choices, you wouldn't have to scrape up garbage like a rat. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Around them, the restaurant had gone quiet. Other staff members were watching now, some with pity in their eyes, others with the kind of morbid curiosity people have when they witness someone else's humiliation. Before Marcus could respond, Robert Hutchinson emerged from his office. Robert was a thin man in his 50s, with grey hair slicked back and glasses perched on his nose. He'd always been fair to Marcus, never warm exactly, but never cruel either. He looked at the scene before him with the expression of someone who'd just discovered a problem he didn't want to deal with. What's going on here? Robert asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Tyler jumped in immediately. Mr. Hutchinson, I caught Marcus stealing food from a table. He was putting it in takeout containers to take home. Robert's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked at Marcus. Is this true? It was going to be thrown away, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't stealing. The customers left. They didn't want it, and it was going in the trash. That doesn't matter, Robert said, sighing. He seemed tired suddenly, much older than his 50-something years. You know the policy, Marcus. Food that leaves this restaurant either goes to a paying customer or it gets disposed of properly. We can't have staff taking home food. It sets a bad precedent. A bad precedent, Marcus repeated, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. We throw away hundreds of dollars of food every single night. Every night. And I can't take home what would literally be garbage in 5 minutes. It's about liability, Robert said, though he didn't sound convinced by his own words. If someone gets sick from old food, they could sue the restaurant. It's about insurance, about protecting the business. That food isn't old, Marcus said, his voice rising despite himself. It was just served. It's fresh. It's perfectly good. And you're going to throw it away while my sisters are at home eating rice and beans for the 4th night in a row. Robert shifted uncomfortably. Around them, the other staff members were frozen, watching this drama unfold like it was a television show. Tyler was smirking openly now, delighted to have caused such chaos. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Robert said, and he did sound genuinely sorry. "But I have to enforce the rules. Consider this a written warning. If it happens again, I'll have to let you go." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus needed this job. His mother's treatments cost thousands of dollars every month. The bills piled up on their kitchen counter like an avalanche waiting to bury them. Aaliyah needed new textbooks for her AP classes. Destiny had outgrown all her shoes. Their rent was due in a week, and Marcus was already short. He looked down at the bag of food in his hands, food that would feed his family for 2 days, and then slowly, deliberately, he emptied the containers back onto the plate. The steak made a dull thud. The lobster looked obscene sitting there, perfect and untouched, about to become trash. Tyler laughed. "Good dog," he said quietly, just loud enough for Marcus to hear. Something in Marcus snapped, not violently, not dramatically, but quietly. Like a thread that had been pulled too tight for too long. He looked at Tyler, really looked at him, at his expensive suit and his perfect hair and his face that had never known a day of real struggle. And Marcus saw something in that moment with perfect clarity. Tyler wasn't better than him. Tyler was just luckier. And luck, Marcus had learned, was often mistaken for virtue in this world. "You know what, Tyler?" Marcus said, his voice calm now, almost eerily so. "I actually feel sorry for you." Tyler's smirk faltered. "Excuse me?" "I feel sorry for you," Marcus repeated. "Because you're going to go through your whole life thinking you earned everything you have. You're going to think you're successful because you're smart or hardworking or special. But the truth is, you're none of those things. You're just a lucky accident of birth. And the worst part is, you'll never be wise enough to know the difference." The restaurant was dead silent now. Even Robert seemed shocked into stillness. Marcus continued, "I come to work every day, and I do my job with dignity, even though people like you treat me like I'm less than human. I take care of my family. I make sacrifices you couldn't even imagine. And yeah, I was going to take home some food that this restaurant considers garbage, but you know what I've never done? I've never made someone feel small to make myself feel big. I've never mocked someone for being poor. I've never looked down on another human being for trying to survive." Tyler's face had gone red. "You can't talk to me like that." "I just did," Marcus said. He turned to Robert. "You want my apron? You want me to quit right now, to save you the trouble of firing me later?" Robert raised his hands. "Nobody's getting fired. Marcus, go take your break. Cool off. Tyler, go check on your tables. Everyone else back to work. Show's over." But it wasn't over. Something had shifted in that moment. Some invisible line had been crossed. Marcus walked to the break room in the back, past the kitchen, where Chef Antonio gave him a sympathetic nod, past the dishwashing station, where Ramon, who barely spoke English, offered him a small smile of solidarity. In the break room, Marcus sat down on the worn couch and put his head in his hands. He didn't cry. He was too tired to cry, too drained, too numb. He thought about his mother, lying in her bed at home, so thin now that she barely looked like herself anymore. He thought about how she'd apologized to him last week, tears in her eyes, saying she was sorry she got sick, sorry she was such a burden. As if cancer was something to apologize for, as if being ill was a moral failure. He thought about Aaliyah, who never complained even though she wore the same 3 outfits to school over and over, rotating them so it wasn't quite so obvious that she had nothing else. She was getting bullied for it, Marcus knew. though she tried to hide it from him. He'd seen the comments on her Instagram before. She'd quickly closed the app, comments about how she always wore the same clothes, about how she must be poor, about how she probably smelled. He thought about Destiny, who'd stopped asking for things entirely. When her class went on a field trip to the Science Museum, she'd told Marcus she didn't want to go, even though he knew how much she loved science. She'd said it was boring, that she'd been there before, but Marcus knew the truth. The trip cost $40, and $40 meant they couldn't buy milk that week, couldn't buy bread, couldn't afford the little things that added up to survival. This was his life now, working himself to exhaustion for tips that never quite covered the bills, watching food that could feed his family get thrown in the trash, being humiliated by people who'd never known what it meant to choose between medicine and food, between keeping the lights on and keeping warm. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Yeah?" Marcus called out. The door opened, and Jenna stepped in. She was in her 30s, had 2 kids of her own, and had been working at Celestial for 5 years. She'd always been kind to Marcus, giving him advice on which tables tipped well and which customers to avoid. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down next to him. "You okay?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Do I look okay?" "No," she admitted. "You look like you're about to fall apart, and honestly, I don't blame you. Tyler is a spoiled brat who's never worked a real day in his life." "Did you need something?" Marcus asked, not unkindly, but he was too tired for sympathy right now. Jenna reached into her purse and pulled out a container. "Chef Antonio made you a plate. He wanted me to bring it to you. It's off the books, so don't tell anyone, but he said you need to eat." Marcus stared at the container. Inside was pasta, fresh bread, and a piece of tiramisu. His eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," Jenna said firmly. "And you will, because that's what decent people do. They take care of each other." She stood up. "I know you've got a lot on your plate, Marcus. More than anyone your age should have to deal with. But you're not alone, okay? Some of us see you. Some of us know how hard you're working." After she left, Marcus sat there holding the container of food. He thought about kindness, how it could come from the most unexpected places, how a simple gesture could feel like a lifeline when you were drowning. His shift ended at midnight. Marcus clocked out, changed out of his uniform, and stepped out into the Miami night. The air was thick and humid, carrying the smell of the ocean and exhaust fumes. He walked to the bus stop, his feet screaming in protest with every step. The bus was mostly empty at this hour. A few night shift workers heading home, a couple of tourists who'd stayed out too late, a homeless man sleeping in the back. Marcus found a seat by the window and stared out at the passing city. Miami at night was beautiful in a sad sort of way. All those lights, all those people, each one carrying their own struggles, their own stories, their own quiet desperations. He got off at his stop in Liberty City, a neighborhood far from the glitz and glamour of South Beach, where he worked. Here, the streets were cracked, the buildings were tired, and everyone was just trying to get by. Marcus walked the 3 blocks to his apartment building, a squat concrete structure with peeling paint and a broken intercom system. The apartment was quiet when he entered. His mother was asleep in her bedroom, hopefully having a good night with minimal pain. Aaliyah was asleep on the couch, her textbooks spread around her. She must have fallen asleep studying again. Destiny was in the room she shared with Aaliyah, her nightlight casting soft shadows on the wall. Marcus carefully moved Aaliyah's books, covered her with a blanket, and then went to the kitchen. He opened the container Jenna had given him. The food was still warm. For a moment, he considered eating it himself. He was starving, had been running on adrenaline and coffee for hours. But instead, he divided the pasta into 3 portions, wrapped them carefully, and put them in the refrigerator. His sisters could have it for lunch tomorrow. They needed it more than he did. He made himself a peanut butter sandwich, the last of the bread and the last of the peanut butter, and ate it standing at the counter. Then he checked on his mother. She was sleeping, her breathing shallow but steady. The medications sat on her nightstand, a pharmacy's worth of pills that cost a fortune, even with insurance. Marcus had called the billing department at the hospital last week to set up another payment plan. They'd been polite, but firm. If he missed a payment, they'd send the account to collections. His mother's credit was already ruined. His would be next. In the bathroom, Marcus looked at himself in the mirror. He looked older than 24. There were dark circles under his eyes, worry lines on his forehead. When had he started looking so tired? When had the weight of the world become so visible on his face? He thought about Tyler's words. Maybe if you'd made better choices, you wouldn't have to scrape up garbage like a rat. The words echoed in his mind, cruel and cutting. But what choices had Marcus made that were so wrong? He'd chosen to take care of his family. He'd chosen to be responsible. He'd chosen to sacrifice his own dreams so that his sisters could still have theirs. Were those bad choices? Or was the world just set up in a way that punished people for being decent? Marcus brushed his teeth and collapsed into bed. His mattress was old, springs poking through in places, but he was too exhausted to care. Sleep came quickly, heavy and dreamless. The next morning, Marcus woke to his phone alarm at 8. He'd only gotten 5 hours of sleep, but that was normal now. He dragged himself out of bed and started the coffee maker, an ancient machine that sputtered and groaned, but still produced something drinkable. Aaliyah was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with her homework. She looked up when Marcus entered and smiled. "Morning. Morning, kiddo," Marcus said. "You were up late studying." "AP bio test today," she said. "I think I'm ready, though." Marcus ruffled her hair affectionately. "You're always ready. You're the smartest person I know." Aaliyah's smile widened, then faltered. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are we going to be okay?" The question was simple, but it carried the weight of all her fears, all her worries that she tried so hard to hide. Marcus sat down across from her. He wanted to lie, wanted to tell her that everything was fine, that she shouldn't worry. But Aaliyah was too smart for that. She saw the bills piling up, saw their mother getting sicker, saw Marcus working himself to death. "I don't know," Marcus said honestly, "but I'm doing everything I can to make sure we are. And you know what? We've made it this far. We're still here, still fighting. That counts for something." Aaliyah nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I got a scholarship interview," she said quietly, "for a full ride to Florida State. They have a pre-med program." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride and something else, something that felt almost like hope. "Aaliyah, that's amazing. When did you find out?" "Last week." "I didn't want to say anything because—" She trailed off, but Marcus understood. She didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, didn't want to add another disappointment if it didn't work out. "You're going to crush that interview," Marcus said firmly. "You're going to get that scholarship, and you're going to become an amazing doctor, and one day all of this is going to be a story you tell about how strong you were." Aaliyah wiped her eyes. "I hope so." Destiny emerged from the bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is there breakfast?" Marcus felt that familiar pang of guilt. "We've got cereal," he said, knowing the box was almost empty. "And I've got a surprise for lunch. There's pasta in the fridge that I brought home last night." Destiny's face lit up. At 12 years old, she still had that childhood wonder, that ability to find joy in small things. "Really? Can I have some now?" "That's for lunch," Marcus said, "but I'll make you some toast." He made toast for his sisters using the last of the bread, watched them eat, and then got ready for his afternoon shift. Celestial was only open for dinner during the week, but on weekends they did lunch service too. Marcus was scheduled for the Saturday lunch shift, which meant dealing with the brunch crowd, which meant dealing with drunk tourists and demanding locals. Before he left, he checked on his mother. She was awake, propped up in bed with pillows, watching television. She looked so small in that bed, so fragile. Cancer was eating her alive from the inside out, and there was nothing Marcus could do except watch and work and hope that the treatments would buy them more time. "Morning, Mum," Marcus said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Morning, baby," she said, her voice raspy. "You working today?" "Yeah, lunch shift. I'll be home around 6. His mother reached out and took his hand. Her skin was paper thin, bruised from all the IVs. Marcus, I heard you come in late last night. You need to take care of yourself. You're working too hard. I'm fine, Mum. No, you're not, she said, and there was a sharpness in her voice, a flash of the woman she used to be before the cancer. You're 24 years old, and you look like you're carrying the weight of the world. That's not fair. I'm your mother. I'm supposed to take care of you, not the other way around. Mom, please don't. Let me finish, she interrupted. I know I got sick. I know it's ruined everything. Your college, your dreams, everything you wanted for yourself. And I'm so sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. Marcus felt tears threatening to fall. You have nothing to be sorry for. You didn't choose to get cancer. This isn't your fault. I know, she said, but it doesn't make it any easier to watch my son sacrifice everything for me. She squeezed his hand. Promise me something. Promise me that when I'm gone, you'll go back to school. You'll chase your dreams. You'll live your life. You're not going anywhere, Marcus said firmly, even though they both knew it was a lie. The doctors had said 6 months to a year. That was 8 months ago. His mother smiled sadly. Promise me anyway. I promise, Marcus whispered. He kissed her forehead and left for work, the promise sitting heavy in his chest. The bus ride to South Beach felt longer than usual, each stop a reminder of the distance between his world and the world he was about to enter. By the time he arrived at Celestial, he'd managed to push his emotions down, to lock them away in that place where he kept all the things that hurt too much to examine. The lunch shift was brutal. The restaurant was packed with tourists, celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, and Saturday afternoons, with nothing better to do than spend money. Marcus moved through his section like a machine, taking orders, delivering food, refilling drinks, all with that same practiced smile that never reached his eyes. Tyler was working too, and he seemed to take special pleasure in making Marcus's life difficult. He'd swoop in on Marcus's tables, chatting up the customers, angling for tips. He'd make comments under his breath when he passed Marcus in the kitchen. Hey, found any good garbage lately? And make sure you don't steal any napkins on your way out. Marcus ignored him. He had bigger problems than Tyler Morrison's cruelty. Around 2 o'clock, a family of 4 was seated in Marcus's section. The father was a large man in his 50s, wearing a polo shirt and expensive sunglasses pushed up on his head. The mother was thin and blonde, dripping with jewelry. Their 2 kids, teenagers, were glued to their phones, barely acknowledging the world around them. Marcus approached the table with menus. Good afternoon. Welcome to Celestial. My name is Marcus, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with something to drink? The father barely looked at him. Water, for everyone, and make sure it's filtered. My wife is very particular. Of course, sir. I'll be right back with those. When Marcus returned with the water, the father was ready to order. He rattled off his selection without looking at the menu, clearly irregular, and then added, and make sure the steak is cooked properly this time. Last time I was here, it was overdone. I'll make sure to tell the chef, Marcus said. How would you like it cooked? Medium rare. If it comes out medium, I'm sending it back. The mother ordered a salad with so many modifications that Marcus had to write it down twice. The kids ordered burgers, the most expensive burgers on the menu, at $35 each. As the meal progressed, it became clear that this family was going to be difficult. The father sent back his steak. It was too rare, then it was too well done. Then it was cooked correctly, but now it was cold because it had been sent back twice. The mother complained that her salad had too much dressing, then not enough. The kids were rude, snapping their fingers at Marcus when they wanted something, never looking up from their phones. Marcus maintained his composure. He apologized profusely, got the chef to remake the steak a 3rd time, brought more dressing, more bread, more water, more everything. His face hurt from smiling. When the meal was finally over and Marcus brought the check, the father looked at it and scoffed. You're kidding me. You're going to charge me full price after all those mistakes? Sir, I can speak to my manager. You do that, the father said. Because I'm not paying full price for a meal that was screwed up 3 times. Marcus went to find Robert, who listened to the complaint with a patient expression and then went to the table himself. Marcus watched from a distance as Robert apologized, offered a discount, and finally comped the entire meal to keep the peace. The family left satisfied, and Robert returned to Marcus with a disappointed expression. "Marcus, you need to be more careful. That's the 3rd complaint this month." "The 3rd complaint?" Marcus felt his frustration rising. "Mr. Hutchinson, that man sent his steak back 3 times. The first time it was cooked exactly as he ordered. He was just looking for a free meal." "Maybe," Robert said, "but we can't afford to lose customers. You need to handle these situations better. Be more attentive, anticipate their needs before they have to complain." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to point out the injustice of it all, but he just nodded. "Yes, sir." The rest of the shift passed in a blur. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, Marcus was exhausted. His feet hurt, his back hurt, his soul hurt. He clocked out and changed out of his uniform, ready to go home and collapse. As he was leaving through the back door, he saw something that made him stop. There, by the dumpster, was Tyler, throwing away bags of food. Not scraps, not garbage, but perfectly good food. Unopened bread, vegetables that looked fresh, even sealed packages of meat. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked. Tyler turned, surprised. "Oh, it's you. I'm throwing away the waste from the kitchen." "Why do you care?" "That food isn't waste," Marcus said, walking closer. "That bread is still good. Those vegetables are fresh. Why are you throwing them away?" Tyler shrugged. "Restaurant policy. Anything that's been in the kitchen for more than 2 days gets tossed. Liability issues or whatever." Marcus felt that same anger from the night before rising in his chest. "So instead of donating it, instead of letting someone who needs it take it home, you're just going to throw it away." "It's not my decision," Tyler said defensively. "Take it up with management if you care so much." Marcus looked at the bags of food, thought about his empty refrigerator at home, thought about his sisters eating rice and beans again, thought about his mother who could barely keep food down, but should at least have options. And he made another decision. "You know what, I will," Marcus said. He grabbed one of the bags. "Whoa, what are you doing?" Tyler said. "You can't take that, you'll get fired." "Then I'll get fired," Marcus said. He grabbed another bag. "But I'm not going to stand here and watch perfectly good food go to waste while people are starving." "You're insane," Tyler said, but he didn't try to stop him. Marcus carried the bags to the bus stop. They were heavy, awkward, and he probably looked ridiculous carrying garbage bags full of food on public transportation, but he didn't care anymore. He was so tired of caring what people thought, tired of playing by rules that only seemed to apply to people like him. When he got home, Aaliyah and Destiny were doing homework at the kitchen table. They looked up in surprise when Marcus entered with the bags. "What's all that?" Aaliyah asked. "Food," Marcus said, setting the bags on the counter. "Real food, bread, vegetables, some meat. We're going to eat like kings tonight." He unpacked the bags, his sisters watching with wide eyes. There was so much food, more than they'd had in their refrigerator in months. Bread, carrots, potatoes, onions, peppers, sealed packages of chicken breast, even some apples and oranges. "Where did this come from?" Aaliyah asked suspiciously. "Marcus, did you buy all this?" "We can't afford." "I didn't buy it," Marcus interrupted. "They were going to throw it away at the restaurant. All of this was going in the trash, so I took it." Aaliyah bit her lip. "Is that allowed?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. "But I don't care anymore. I'm tired of watching food get wasted while we go hungry. I'm tired of following rules that don't make any sense." Destiny picked up an orange, held it like it was precious. "Can I eat this now?" "Yes," Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. "Yes, you can eat whatever you want." That night, Marcus cooked a real meal for the first time in weeks, chicken with roasted vegetables, fresh bread, apple slices for dessert. They ate at the kitchen table, all 4 of them, even his mother who managed to eat a few bites. It wasn't fancy, wasn't anything like the meals he served at Celestial, but it was the best meal they'd had in months. "This is really good, Marcus," his mother said, smiling. "Thanks, Mom." After dinner, after his sisters had gone to bed and his mother was sleeping, Marcus sat alone in the living room. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. "This is Robert Hutchinson. Tyler informed me that you took food from the restaurant dumpster this evening. While I understand your circumstances, I cannot overlook this. Please see me before your next shift. We need to discuss your future with Celestial." Marcus stared at the text for a long time. He should have felt afraid, should have felt worried about losing his job, but instead he felt something else, a strange sense of peace. He'd fed his family. He'd stood up for what he believed in. Whatever happened next, at least he'd done that. He texted back, "I understand. I'll see you Monday." That weekend passed in a haze. Marcus didn't tell his sisters about the text, didn't tell his mother. He just tried to enjoy the time with them, tried to memorize the sound of Destiny's laugh when they watched a movie together, the way Aaliyah smiled when she talked about her scholarship interview, the peaceful expression on his mother's face when she wasn't in pain. Monday came too quickly. Marcus put on his uniform, took the bus to South Beach, and walked into Celestial with his head held high. Robert was waiting for him in his office. "Close the door," Robert said. Marcus did. He stood in front of Robert's desk, his hands at his sides, ready for whatever came next. Robert sighed, took off his glasses, and rubbed his eyes. "Marcus, you've put me in a very difficult position. I know. Tyler says you took bags of food that were marked for disposal. Is that true?" "Yes." "You understand that I have to fire you for this?" Marcus nodded. "I understand." Robert put his glasses back on and looked at Marcus, really looked at him. "Why? Why would you risk your job like that? You need this position. You've got your family depending on you. Why would you throw it all away for some garbage?" "It wasn't garbage," Marcus said quietly. "It was food, fresh food that could feed my family for a week, and you were going to throw it away." He paused. "Mr. Hutchinson, do you know what it's like to watch your little sister cry because she's hungry? Do you know what it's like to choose between your mother's medication and electricity? I come here every day, and I watch people waste more food in one meal than my family eats in a week. I watch it get scraped into the trash, and I'm supposed to smile and say thank you for the privilege of throwing away food while my family goes without." Robert was quiet for a long moment. "I have 3 kids," he said finally. 2 in college, 1 in high school. I work 60 hours a week to afford their tuition, their activities, everything they need. I understand struggling, Marcus. I do." "Then you understand why I couldn't just watch that food get thrown away," Marcus said. "I do," Robert admitted, "but understanding doesn't change the rules. I have owners to answer to, policies to enforce. If I let you take food home, then every employee will want to. And then where does it end? How do I control inventory? How do I prevent actual theft?" He shook his head. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. But I have to let you go." Marcus nodded slowly. He'd expected this, had prepared himself for it, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. "I understand. When do you want me to leave?" "End of the day," Robert said. "Work your shift, and I'll have your final check ready. I'll give you 2 weeks severance, even though policy says I don't have to. And I'll write you a good reference. You're a hard worker, Marcus. You deserve better than this." Marcus wanted to laugh at that. He deserved better. Everyone kept saying that, as if deserving something meant anything in the real world. He'd learned a long time ago that the universe didn't care what you deserved. Good things happened to bad people, and bad things happened to good people, and there was no cosmic scale balancing it all out. "Thank you," Marcus said, even though he didn't feel thankful. He felt hollow. He left Robert's office and went to start his shift. The lunch service was busy, and Marcus moved through it mechanically. He took orders, delivered food, smiled at customers, accepted their tips. It all felt surreal, like he was watching himself from outside his body. Tyler, of course, couldn't resist gloating. "Heard you got fired," he said as they passed each other in the kitchen. "Guess crime doesn't pay after all." Marcus didn't respond. What was the point? Tyler would never understand. He'd never know what it was like to be desperate, to make impossible choices, to feel like you were drowning and nobody cared enough to throw you a rope. Around 2 o'clock, an elderly couple was seated in Marcus's section. They were in their 70s, the man using a walker, the woman holding his arm to steady him. They moved slowly, carefully, and when they finally settled into their seats, they both looked exhausted from the effort. Marcus approached with menus and his standard greeting, but the old man waved him off. "We know what we want," he said. His voice was gruff, but not unkind. "We've been coming here for 20 years, every anniversary." "Congratulations," Marcus said. "How many years?" 52, the woman said, beaming. "Can you believe it? 52 years with this stubborn old fool." "Hey now," the man protested, but he was smiling too. "Best 52 years of my life." They ordered modestly. Soup and salad, nothing extravagant. Marcus noticed they'd dressed up for the occasion. The man wore a suit that had seen better days, the woman a dress that was probably 20 years old but had been carefully maintained. They reminded Marcus of his own grandparents, who'd passed away when he was young, but who he remembered as being kind and gentle. When Marcus brought their food, the old man stopped him. "Son, you look troubled. Everything all right?" Marcus was surprised by the question. Customers rarely saw him as a person, rarely asked how he was doing. "I'm fine, sir, thank you for asking." "You're a terrible liar," the old man said, but his eyes were kind. "My name's Walter, this is my wife Dorothy. And you don't have to tell us what's wrong, but you also don't have to pretend everything's fine." Marcus felt something crack inside him. Maybe it was because it was his last day, or maybe it was because these two strangers were showing him more kindness than he'd experienced in months, but suddenly he was talking. Not about everything, but about enough. About his mother, about his sisters, about trying to make ends meet and feeling like he was failing. Dorothy reached across the table and took Marcus's hand. Her skin was soft, her grip surprisingly strong. "You're not failing," she said firmly. "You're doing the best you can in an impossible situation. That's not failure, that's courage." "Doesn't feel like courage," Marcus said quietly. "It never does," Walter said. "Courage always feels like fear and exhaustion. But you keep going anyway. That's what makes it courage." They talked for a few more minutes, and then Marcus had to attend to his other tables. But their words stayed with him, a small light in the darkness that had been consuming him. When Walter and Dorothy were ready to leave, Marcus brought them their check. Walter looked at it, nodded, and pulled out his wallet, but instead of a credit card, he pulled out cash, a lot of cash. He counted out enough to cover the meal, and then he kept counting. $20, $40, $60, $80, $100. He put it all on the table. "Sir." "The meal was only $38, Marcus said. "I know," Walter said. "The rest is for you. And before you argue, let me tell you something. Dorothy and I, we weren't always comfortable. When we first got married, we were poor, as church mice. I was working 3 jobs, she was cleaning houses. We knew what it was like to struggle." He stood up slowly, leaning on his walker. "One day, when you're in a better place, you pay it forward. You help someone else who's struggling. That's how the world gets better. One act of kindness at a time." Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. "Thank you," he managed to say. "Thank you so much." After they left, Marcus stood there holding the money, feeling like he'd been given more than just cash. He'd been given hope, a reminder that good people existed, that kindness wasn't dead. The rest of his shift passed quickly. When 6 o'clock came and his shift was over, Marcus clocked out for the last time. He changed out of his uniform and folded it neatly on the bench in the break room. 3 years of his life, reduced to a folded pile of black pants and a white shirt. Jenna found him as he was leaving. "Hey, I heard what happened." "I'm sorry, Marcus." "Thanks, Jenna. For what it's worth, I think what you did was right. This place wastes so much food, it's criminal. Someone should take it home, use it, instead of just throwing it away." "Yeah, well, being right doesn't pay the bills," Marcus said. Jenna hugged him. "You'll find something better, I know you will." Marcus walked out of Celestial for the last time. The Miami sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He stood there for a moment, breathing in the ocean air, trying to figure out what he was going to do next. His phone buzzed. A text from Aaliyah. "Marcus, where are you? Mom's asking for you. She's having a bad day." Marcus's heart sank. He texted back that he was on his way and practically ran to the bus stop. The bus ride home felt eternal, every stop an agonizing delay. When he finally burst through the apartment door, he found Aaliyah in tears and Destiny sitting next to their mother's bed, holding her hand. His mother looked terrible. Her skin was grey, her breathing labored. She managed a weak smile when she saw Marcus. "There's my boy." "Mom, should I call an ambulance?" Marcus asked, his voice rising with panic. "No," she said firmly. "No hospitals. Not today. I just needed to see you." Marcus sat on the edge of her bed and took her other hand. "I'm here, Mom. I'm right here." "I'm tired, Marcus," she said quietly. "I'm so tired of fighting." "I know," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face now. "I know you are." "Promise me again," she said. "Promise me you'll take care of your sisters. Promise me you'll go back to school. Promise me you'll live your life." "I promise, Mom. I promise." She closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I'm sorry I'm leaving you. I'm sorry you have to be so strong." "You have nothing to be sorry for," Marcus said. "Nothing. You're the strongest person I know. You taught me everything. How to be kind, how to be brave, how to keep going even when everything hurts." They sat like that for hours, Marcus and his sisters surrounding their mother, holding her hands, telling her they loved her. Sometime around midnight, her breathing changed, became more shallow, more strained. And then, quietly, peacefully, she stopped breathing altogether. Marcus felt the world stop. His mother was gone. The woman who'd raised him, who'd sacrificed everything for her children, who'd fought so hard to stay with them, was gone. The grief hit him like a tidal wave, drowning him, pulling him under. Aaliyah and Destiny were sobbing. Marcus held them both, the three of them clinging to each other in the darkness, their anchor gone, their world forever changed. The next few days were a blur. There were arrangements to make, a funeral to plan, relatives to notify. Marcus moved through it all like a ghost, numb and hollow. The funeral was small. They couldn't afford much, but the people who came were genuine. Neighbors who'd known his mother, a few nurses from the hospital who'd cared for her, Walter and Dorothy, who somehow found out and came to pay their respects. After the funeral, after everyone had left, and it was just Marcus and his sisters again, reality crashed down. Marcus had no job, they had no income, the bills were still piling up, the rent was overdue. His mother's medical debt was astronomical, more than Marcus could ever hope to pay. He sat at the kitchen table with all the bills spread out in front of him, trying to figure out how to make the math work, but it didn't work. No matter how he added it up, they were drowning. He'd have to find a new job immediately, probably 2 jobs. Aaliyah might have to drop out of school, get a job too. They might lose the apartment. They might end up on the street. The weight of it all was crushing. Marcus put his head in his hands, and finally, after days of holding it together for his sisters, he broke down. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep inside him, all the pain and fear and exhaustion and grief pouring out at once. He didn't hear Aaliyah come in until she put her hand on his shoulder. "Marcus." He looked up at her, his face wet with tears. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "I don't know how to fix this." Aaliyah sat down next to him. At 15, she looked older than her years, worry and sadness etched into her young face. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Together." "I lost my job," Marcus said. "I haven't told you yet, but they fired me last Monday, the day before Mom." He couldn't finish the sentence. Aaliyah's eyes widened. "What? Why?" Marcus told her everything. About the food waste, about taking the bags from the dumpster, about Tyler's cruelty and Robert's rules, and how none of it seemed to matter in the end, because the system was designed to keep people like them down. When he finished, Aaliyah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You did the right thing. The right thing got me fired." "Maybe," Aaliyah said, "But you stood up for what you believed in. You didn't let them make you feel ashamed for trying to feed your family. That matters, Marcus. That means something. It doesn't pay the rent." "No," Aaliyah agreed. "But we'll find a way. I can get a job. I can—" "No," Marcus said firmly. "You're not dropping out of school. You have that scholarship interview next week. You're going to that interview, and you're going to get that scholarship, and you're going to become a doctor. That's what Mum wanted. That's what I want. But Marcus—" "No buts," Marcus said. "I'll figure something out. I always do." The next morning, Marcus started looking for work. He applied everywhere: restaurants, retail stores, warehouses, anything that would hire him. He walked all over Miami, filling out applications, leaving resumes, trying not to look as desperate as he felt. Days turned into a week. He got a few interviews, but no offers. One manager told him he was overqualified. Another said they'd gone with someone else. A third never called him back at all. Marcus kept trying, kept pushing, but with each rejection, he felt himself sinking deeper into despair. Then, on Thursday morning, his phone rang. "Unknown number," Marcus answered, expecting a telemarketer or a bill collector. "Is this Marcus Chen?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is Marcus. My name is Patricia Kowalski. I'm a reporter for the Miami Herald. I'd like to talk to you about what happened at Celestial Restaurant." Marcus's heart sank. "Great," he thought. "Now my humiliation is going to be in the newspaper. How did you hear about that?" "A source reached out to us," Patricia said. "Someone who works at the restaurant. They told us that you were fired for taking food that was going to be thrown away, food that you needed to feed your family. Is that true?" Marcus considered hanging up, but something in Patricia's voice, a genuine curiosity rather than judgment, made him pause. "Yes, that's true. I'd like to interview you," Patricia said. "I'm working on a story about food waste in Miami restaurants, and I think your experience could help shed light on a bigger problem. Would you be willing to talk to me?" Marcus thought about it. What did he have to lose? His job was already gone, his reputation already ruined. Maybe if he told his story, if he explained what had happened, something good could come from it. Or maybe nothing would change, and he'd just be humiliating himself further, but at least he'd have tried. "Okay," Marcus said. "I'll talk to you." They met at a coffee shop near Marcus's apartment. Patricia was in her 40s, with short grey hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She ordered them both coffee and pulled out a notebook. "Tell me everything," she said. So Marcus did. He told her about his mother's cancer, about his sisters, about dropping out of college to work at Celestial. He told her about the food waste, about watching thousands of dollars of perfectly good food get thrown away every night while his family struggled. He told her about taking the leftovers, about Tyler's mockery, about Robert's rules and policies that valued liability over human dignity. Patricia listened intently, taking notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Marcus finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, do you know how much food American restaurants waste every year?" she asked. He shook his head. "Estimates suggest around 22 to 33 billion pounds, Patricia said. "While 42 million Americans struggle with food insecurity, the amount of waste is staggering. And most of it is perfectly good food that gets thrown away because of liability concerns or health code interpretations that are often more strict than necessary." "So I'm not crazy," Marcus said. "This is actually a problem. It's a massive problem," Patricia confirmed. "And your story puts a human face on it. You're not just a statistic. You're a young man who was trying to do the right thing, trying to feed your family, and you were punished for it." Over the next few days, Patricia interviewed other people. She talked to Chef Antonio, who confirmed that Celestial threw away massive amounts of food every night. She talked to Jenna, who described the restaurant's strict policies. She even tried to interview Tyler and Robert, though both declined to comment. The article came out the following Sunday. It was on the front page of the Miami Herald's local section. The headline read, "Restaurant Fires Waiter for Taking Food, Bound for Trash, a story of food waste and economic desperation in Miami." Patricia had done her job well. The article was fair and balanced, but it was also powerful. She'd included statistics about food waste, information about food insecurity in Miami, and quotes from experts about how restaurants could better handle excess food through donation programs and policy changes. And at the center of it all was Marcus's story, told with compassion and detail. Marcus read the article with tears in his eyes. For the first time, someone had listened to him, someone had understood, someone had cared enough to tell his story to the world. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The article went viral on social media. People shared it, commented on it, expressed outrage at Marcus's treatment and sympathy for his situation. Local news stations picked up the story. By Monday morning, Marcus's phone was ringing off the hook with interview requests. But it wasn't just media attention. People started reaching out to help. A GoFundMe page was set up by someone Marcus had never met, and within 24 hours, it had raised $10,000. A local food bank reached out to offer Marcus's family regular food assistance. A law firm contacted him about potentially suing Celestial for wrongful termination. And then, on Tuesday, Marcus got a call that changed everything. "Hello, is this Marcus Chen?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, this is Marcus. My name is David Okonkwo. I own a restaurant called Harvest Kitchen in Coral Gables. I read about what happened to you, and I'd like to offer you a job." Marcus was stunned. "A job?" "Yes, but more than that, I'd like to offer you an opportunity. I've been wanting to start a food recovery program at my restaurant for years, taking the food we would normally waste and using it to feed people who need it. I've never quite figured out how to implement it. But after reading your story, I think you're exactly the person who could help me make it happen. I'd like to hire you not just as a server, but as the coordinator for this program. It would mean working with local food banks, organizing volunteers, handling logistics. Are you interested?" Marcus couldn't speak for a moment. Was this really happening? "Yes," he finally managed. "Yes, I'm very interested." "Great. Can you come in tomorrow for an interview? I'd like to discuss the details with you." That night, Marcus told his sisters about the call. Aaliyah screamed with joy and hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. Destiny danced around the kitchen. For the first time since their mother died, there was hope in the apartment. Actual, tangible hope. The interview with David went better than Marcus could have imagined. Harvest Kitchen was smaller than Celestial, more intimate, focused on locally sourced ingredients and sustainable practices. David was passionate about reducing food waste and had been frustrated by the industry's acceptance of throwing away massive amounts of food. "I want Harvest to be different," David explained. "I want us to lead by example, show other restaurants that there's a better way. With your help, I think we can create a model that others can follow." Marcus started the following week. His role was split between serving tables and coordinating the food recovery program. It was challenging work, requiring him to build relationships with local food banks and homeless shelters, organize pickup schedules, train staff on proper food handling for donation, and navigate the complex web of liability laws and health regulations. But it was also the most meaningful work Marcus had ever done. Every night, instead of watching food get thrown away, he watched it get packed up and sent to people who needed it. Families like his, struggling to make ends meet. Homeless individuals who didn't know where their next meal would come from. Children who went to bed hungry. The program grew quickly. Other restaurants in Miami read about what Harvest Kitchen was doing and reached out to David for advice. Some wanted to start their own programs. The local news did a follow-up story, showing Marcus coordinating a food pickup, interviewing the people whose lives were being changed by the program. 3 months after starting at Harvest Kitchen, Marcus received another unexpected call. This one was from Florida State University. They'd heard about his story, about his sacrifice to care for his family, about his work with the food recovery program. They wanted to offer him a scholarship, a full ride. He could go back to school, finish his architecture degree, and they'd work with him to create a flexible schedule that allowed him to continue his work at Harvest Kitchen. Marcus cried when he got the news. He called Aaliyah immediately to tell her. She cried too, tears of joy this time. Her own scholarship interview had gone well, and she was waiting to hear back, but knowing that her brother would get to chase his dreams again meant everything to her. 6 months after their mother's death, Marcus and his sisters stood in the cemetery where she was buried. It was a clear, beautiful day, the kind of day his mother had always loved. They'd brought flowers, her favorite kind, and they stood there in silence for a while, each lost in their own memories. "I got the scholarship," Aaliyah said quietly, "to Florida State, full ride for pre-med." Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. "Mom would be so proud." "She'd be proud of you too," Aaliyah said. "Look at everything you've done. You took care of us, you stood up for what was right, and now you're helping so many people. You changed things, Marcus." "We all changed things," Marcus said, "together." Destiny, who'd been quiet, spoke up. "Do you think Mom can see us? Do you think she knows?" Marcus put his arms around both his sisters. "Yeah," he said, "I think she knows, and I think she's smiling." A year later, Marcus stood in front of a crowd at a city council meeting. Miami was considering a new ordinance that would make it easier for restaurants to donate excess food, reducing liability concerns and streamlining the process. Marcus had been asked to speak in support of the ordinance, to share his story and explain why this change mattered. He talked about his mother, about his sisters, about the night he was fired for trying to feed his family. He talked about the food waste he'd witnessed, the injustice of throwing away perfectly good food while people went hungry. And he talked about the change he'd seen since starting the food recovery program at Harvest Kitchen, the lives that had been touched, the families that had been fed. "What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone," Marcus said, his voice strong and clear. "No one should have to choose between their job and feeding their family. No one should be punished for trying to prevent waste and help people in need. We can do better. We must do better. And it starts with recognizing that food is not just a commodity. It's a basic human need. And when we throw it away while people go hungry, we're failing as a society." The ordinance passed unanimously. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start, a recognition that things needed to change, that the system needed to be better. After the meeting, Tyler Morrison approached Marcus. He looked different, older somehow, less arrogant. "Hey Marcus," he said awkwardly, "can we talk?" Marcus was surprised but nodded. They stepped outside, away from the crowd. "I wanted to apologize," Tyler said, "for everything. For how I treated you, for reporting you, for being such an asshole. I've been thinking about it a lot, especially after your story came out, and I realized I was wrong about everything." Marcus studied him. Tyler seemed genuine, seemed to actually mean it. "Why?" Marcus asked. "Why did you treat me that way?" Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I think I was scared. Scared of ending up like you. Not you specifically, but scared of struggling, of being poor, of not having control. So I looked down on anyone who was struggling as a way of convincing myself that it could never happen to me, that I was different, better. But I wasn't better. I was just luckier. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." Marcus felt some of the old anger dissolve. Tyler's apology didn't fix anything, didn't undo the hurt, but it was something. It was growth. "Thank you," Marcus said. "I appreciate you saying that." They shook hands, and Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of release. Holding on to anger had only hurt him. Letting it go felt like freedom. 2 years after being fired from Celestial, Marcus stood on the stage at Miami-Dade College's graduation ceremony. He'd gone back to school part-time while working at Harvest Kitchen, taking classes in the evening and online when he could. It had taken him 2 years to finish his associate's degree, the first step toward his architecture license. He was transferring to Florida State in the fall to complete his bachelor's degree. As he walked across the stage to receive his diploma, he thought about his mother. She wasn't there to see it, but somehow he felt her presence anyway. In the strength she'd given him, in the values she'd taught him, in the love that still surrounded him, even though she was gone. Aaliyah was in the audience, home from Florida State for the weekend, screaming and cheering louder than anyone else. Destiny was there too, now 14 and thriving in high school, her love of reading having evolved into a passion for writing. She wanted to be a journalist, inspired by Patricia Kowalski's article that had changed their lives. David Okonkwo was there too, along with Jenna from Celestial and Chef Antonio, and even Walter and Dorothy, who'd become like surrogate grandparents to Marcus and his sisters. Patricia Kowalski was there, covering the story for the Herald. The food recovery program Marcus had started at Harvest Kitchen had expanded to 30 restaurants across Miami, feeding thousands of people every month. After the ceremony, Marcus stood with his sisters, taking photos, celebrating. He thought about the night he'd been mocked for taking leftovers home, the night that had felt like the end of everything. It had been a low point, a moment of humiliation and despair, but it had also been a turning point. That night had taught him something important. It had taught him that the rules weren't always right. That sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules, even when there were consequences. It had taught him that his voice mattered, that his story mattered, that one person standing up could start a ripple effect that changed things. But more than that, it had taught him about resilience, about how you could be knocked down again and again, could face loss and pain and injustice, and still get back up, still keep fighting, still believe that tomorrow could be better than today. "I'm proud of you," Aaliyah said, hugging him tight. "I'm proud of us," Marcus corrected. "We did this together." That night, Marcus lay in bed in the new apartment they'd been able to afford, thanks to his job at Harvest Kitchen and the money from the GoFundMe. It was bigger than their old place, brighter, with actual bedrooms for each of his sisters. There was food in the refrigerator, real food, more than enough. The bills were paid. His mother's medical debt had been negotiated down and was slowly being paid off. They weren't rich. They still had to budget carefully, still had to make choices and sacrifices. But they weren't desperate anymore. They weren't drowning. They were surviving, and more than that, they were thriving. Marcus thought about the path that had led him here, the pain, the struggle, the humiliation of that night at Celestial, and he realized something. He wouldn't change it, not any of it, because that pain had forged him into who he was now. It had given him purpose, had shown him what he was capable of, had led him to work that actually mattered. He thought about all the people who were eating tonight because of the food recovery program. Families who didn't have to choose between food and rent. Children who didn't have to go to bed hungry. And he thought about how it had all started with one simple act of taking home food that would have been thrown away. Sometimes, Marcus realized, the smallest acts of resistance, the tiniest refusals to accept injustice, could grow into something much bigger. His story wasn't special. There were millions of people struggling just like he had, fighting battles that no one saw, making sacrifices that no one acknowledged. But his story had been told, and in being told, it had changed things. Not everything, not enough. There was still so much work to do, so much injustice to fight against. But it was a start, and sometimes a start was all you needed. Marcus closed his eyes, and for the first time in years he slept peacefully. He dreamed of his mother, healthy and whole, smiling at him with pride. He dreamed of buildings he would design, structures that would stand long after he was gone. He dreamed of a future where no one had to choose between dignity and survival, where kindness was the rule rather than the exception. And when he woke up the next morning, he got out of bed ready to keep fighting for that future, one day, one meal, one act of kindness at a time. Because that's what his mother had taught him, that's what his struggle had shown him. That change didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly, incrementally, through the accumulated actions of people who refused to accept that the world had to be the way it was. Marcus Chen had been mocked for taking leftovers home. He'd been fired, humiliated, pushed to the edge of despair. But he hadn't broken. He'd bent, he'd struggled, he'd nearly fallen, but he'd gotten back up. And in getting back up, he'd shown others that it was possible, that you could face the worst and still come out the other side, that your circumstances didn't define your worth, that even in your darkest moment there was still hope. And maybe, Marcus thought as he made breakfast for his sisters, that was enough. Maybe that was everything. And that was how Marcus Chen had been mocked for taking leftovers home. He'd been fired, humiliated, pushed to the edge of despair. But he hadn't broken. Marcus had lost so much. His mother, his job, years of his life to struggle. But he'd gained something too: purpose, voice, the knowledge that doing the right thing matters even when it costs you everything. Because sometimes the smallest act of defiance becomes the spark that lights a fire. Marcus Chen was just a waiter who took leftovers home. But his story changed everything. I encourage you, my beloved family, never relent or be discouraged in making sacrifices of compassion and love to impact your world. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also check out other heart-touching reality stories in this channel.